Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So I wanted to, this was about 2 years ago, I wanted to talk about Muslim rule, Muslim dynasties actually, Muslim dynasties and what we can learn from them. History is for learning lessons. History just for the sake of history or archaeology just for the sake of archaeology is zero unless we can learn lessons from various branches, various disciplines. Other branches teach us about the might and power of the Creator and so on and so forth. So reward and punishment, lessons from Muslim rule. And this time, last week, I tried to summarize the Umayyad dynasty. About 16 months, 17 months ago, we talked about in more detail about the Umayyad dynasty. And I summarized in one session last week. And today I will summarize in one session about the Abbasid dynasty and see what lessons we can draw. The Khulafa Rashidin, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said it will last about 30 years, and it lasted 30 years. 4 Khalifas, average 7.5 years. The Umayyad Khilafat, 91 years. 14 Khalifas, average comes to 6.5 years, very close. And the Abbasid Khilafat, 508 years. And as you will see later on, just the first 100 years, like the Umayyad Khilafat, just the first 100 years, they were in their ascendancy period. They were rising, and then there was a slow decline for the next 300-400 years. And 37 Khalifas, average 14 years. The Abbasid dynasty is the second after the Umayyad dynasty, and these are the two famous monarchical dynasties of the Muslim empires. It overthrew the Umayyad Khilafat in 750 AD. In later years, their empire fragmented. That means, let's say, after 850, they came to power in 750. After 850, they started a slow decline, a process of slow decline for the next 300-400 years. But they retained spiritual supremacy as Khalifas until 1258. They had nominal power for a couple of 200-300 years. And after that also they had nominal power but that was from Egypt. And by the time of the Crusades, they were shadow of their former self. In 1258 AD, their rule came to an end after the Mongols mercilessly sacked and destroyed Baghdad. A series of shadow Khalifas continued under the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt, 1250 to 1517, that's 250 years. Over 250 years, they continued as shadow Khalifas, but the Mamluks ruled Egypt. And then in 1517, the Ottomans under Sultan Selim I conquered the Mamluks in 1517, and the title of Khalifa was officially transferred to the Turks. Although the Ottomans had been claiming the title of Khalifa long before that, officially transferred in 1517. And it continued until 1924, when Mustafa Ataturk, he abolished Khilafat. With the Abbasids died the era of Arab supremacy over Islam, with the Mongols coming. The name is derived from that of the uncle of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Al-Abbas, who died in 653 AD. From about 718 AD, members of his family, that means Abbas Radiallahu Anhu, worked to gain control of the empire from the Umayyads. The Umayyads were at their peak. Until 750, when they were overthrown, they were at their peak. And by skillful propaganda, the Abbasids won much support, especially from Shia Arabs and Persians in Khorasan, by saying that we belong to Ahle Bayt, the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that single phrase gained tremendous support for them. And also because of foolishness of the Umayyads in considering themselves as superior and the Arabs as superior, and making making the others think that they are second-class citizens, though they were Muslims, converted Muslims, non-Arabs. So they were known as Mawalis. In 747 AD, 3 years before their abolishment or their banishment, there was open revolt under the leadership of Abu Muslim, and that led to the defeat of Marwan II, the Khalifa at that time, or the king of that time. I hesitate to use the term Khalifa. They were not representatives of Allah or His Rasul. They were representatives of themselves. And so they were kings and monarchs or emperors, whatever you might call them, but you should not call them Khalifas. But they claimed the title of Khalifa. And that title stuck with historians and has been passed on to us. The defeat of Marwan II, the last Umayyad Khalifa, at the Battle of the Great Zab River in 750 in Mesopotamia, Iraq, and to the proclamation of the first Abbasid Khalifa, Abul Abbas al-Saffa. And Abu Muslim, the leader of the rebels, Abbasid rebels, so he came from Central Asia with his force and attacked the Umayyad Khilafat. And then in 750, he installed Abul Abbas al-Saffa as the first of the Abbasid Khalifas. He ruled from 750 to 754 and was ruthless. And they had to be ruthless. You have to quash any opposition, ruthlessly quash, sparing neither the living nor the dead of the Umayyads. It is said, and Allah knows best, these, other than the authentic hadith, we cannot rely on anything as being authentic. It is said that books record that the Abbasids dug out the Umayyads from their graves and desecrated the graves. Allah knows best. We can forget that part. Al-Mansur was the second Khalifa. This is just a summary. We talked in details about each one of them 16 months ago or so. Al-Mansur, the victorious, was the second Khalifa and the real founder. And he too continued with the ruthless tradition. And to the extent that Abu Muslim, the man responsible for establishing the Abbasid dynasty, also became his target of Al-Mansur, owing to his increasing power. The mutilated body of the beneficiary of the Abbasids was unceremoniously discarded in the Tigris River. 500 years later, Tigris carried the blood of 1 to 2 million Muslims, including the Abbasid noblemen. The caliph was captured, tortured. We'll talk about it either next week or the week after. The sack of Baghdad. Al-Mansur founded Baghdad, apart from his ruthlessness and being the real founder of the Abbasid dynasty, that was his enduring legacy, made it concentric. The palace was in the center, and Then there was a mosque, a huge palace, and the city grew concentrically around the palace. The imperial palace was in the center, 360,000 square feet. Today's largest superstores are Walmart stores. So I inquired, how much is the average size of a Walmart store? And I found it is 120,000 square feet. And the palace was 3 times the super markets of Walmart or supermarts of Walmart. 3 times, 120,000, 360,000 square feet. And compared to that, and that would give you a sense of their mentality, the mosque was 1/4 of that size, the Grand Mosque, 90,000 square feet. So in the center, you can see of the concentric circle, in the center, you can see the palace, and then there were other nobles and noblemen and prince and princesses. And then the city grew around it on near the Tigris River. And this map of Baghdad from around 150 to 300 Hijra is from William Muir, and he tried to somehow piece it together in 1833. And a more latter day Baghdad, more recent Baghdad, and even more recent Baghdad, northwestern part of Baghdad. And this is one of the oldest relics of those periods dating from 901 to 907. Khalifa Muqtafi, 901 to 907. Baghdad in 1930, horse-driven carriage. And this is Baghdad on the bank of the Tigris in a present-day map of Iraq. The next notable ruler is Al-Mahdi. He was the 3rd Khalifa, 775 to 785 AD, highly magnanimous. He was different from his father, Al-Mansur, and deeply religious. Al-Mahdi was opposite to his father, Al-Mansur. Even though deeply religious, they were into pomp and grandeur. People just can't get out of it. The only exception was Omar bin Abdulaziz. In 99 Hijri, he totally abandoned the palace. I'm not going to live in the palace. He abandoned Khilafat. He said, I'm not going to be Khilafat. He refused. When the previous Khalifa's announcement was read, he refused to take it. But then people forced him to take it. And then he abandoned the palace and palatial living with, Allah knows, 1 or 2 divisions of soldiers guarding the palace. He sent everybody to the borders. So Al-Mahdi was magnanimous, lived in the palace, lived there in the pomp and grandeur, and among attendants and slaves and concubines. I cannot say for sure, but this was their way of life, And the highly notable thing is that the palace was open to the people, meaning they could come and complain to him. And such was also the mentality of his son, Al-Hadi. Al-Hadi ruled from 785 to 786, only 1 year, was the 4th Khalifa. He was very open to the people of his empire and allowed citizens to visit him in the palace at Baghdad to address him, and died of an incurable disease. Allah knows what that incurable disease is. In many cases, there are palace coups, and they are announced as he died suddenly out of heart attack or incurable disease. Allah knows best. Harun al-Rashid, the 5th Khalifa's rule, is regarded as the height of so-called, I want to term it as so-called Islamic Golden Age. I will inshallah spend one session on this Islamic Golden Age, dubbed by historians. There I will talk why I call it so-called power. In worldly terms, as the general said, it was the Islamic Golden Age in worldly ways. We'll talk about that later separately, and we'll talk about the most illustrious people who contributed to this Islamic Golden Age. And Harun al-Rashid established the legendary library Baitul Hikmah in Baghdad. And it was actually the center of learning and teaching. It was not just a library. Some of the very best minds of those times, they populated the library, and they learned and they disseminated knowledge to others. And students flocked from all over. And Baghdad began to flourish as the world center of knowledge, culture, and trade. And Baghdad was, for many centuries after its founding, and the Abbasids making it their capital, for many centuries, was the most illustrious city of the world. Nothing in Europe or anywhere rivaled Baghdad. Here, the classic works of the Greeks were translated into Arabic. From Greek to Arabic, in time fueled the greatest minds of Europe. Those Arabic works were later on translated to other languages of Europe, including English. And that's how the classic works of the Greeks were preserved, and the Arabs helped in that process. And then we see the so-called Renaissance. Otherwise, these works would have been lost. Renaissance in Europe after the Middle Ages, the so-called Dark Middle Ages in Europe. It was actually Dark Middle Age in Europe. His reign marks the start of the age of learning in secular mold. The fabulous descriptions of Harun and his court in the 1001 Nights are idealized and romanticized. And there's quite a bit of overreach. Yet they had considerable basis in fact. And the grandeur and pomp of Harun al-Rashid can be gleaned from an eyewitness account that I read, that this person, he came to convey a message to Harun al-Rashid from Harun al-Rashid's son, who left the court because he was fed up with the pomp and grandeur. He was very pious. He left the court at the age of 17 or 18 and worked as a mason, Rajmistri. And very soon he was in deathbed, and this person who came, I forgot his name, to convey the message to Harun al-Rashid was by the side of the son of Harun al-Rashid. And this son gave him the signet ring given by the Khalifa to his son when the son was leaving the palace. And so at the time of death, the son told this person, give this to Khalifa Harun al-Rashid and this Quran also to him, and tell him such and such things. I forgot. Reminded him about Akhirah. Tell him these words, reminder about Akhirah. And so this person went to meet Khalifa Harun al-Rashid and was nearing his palace when he saw the guards coming out, cavalry. And he says in his eyewitness account that I saw 1,000 horsemen coming out and then another 1,000 horsemen coming out, and another 1,000. In this way, 10 regiments, 10 regiments of 1,000 horsemen each. So that was 10,000, one division. And then the Khalifa coming out. And behind him, Allah knows how many such regiments of cavalry. And this person conveyed to Harun al-Rashid later on. So that gives us a quick sense of the pomp and grandeur. Untold wealth had flowed into the new capital of Baghdad since its foundation in 762 by Al-Mansur. The leading men, and still more their wives, competed in conspicuous consumption, as people of our times do, those who surpass others in wealth. And in Harun's reign, this reached levels unknown before. His wife Zubaydah would have at her table only vessels of gold and silver, studded with gems. She had her own palace. And she, as well as Harun al-Rashid, both were paradoxes. She was a paradox in the sense that, firstly, her real name was not Zubaydah. Her real name was something else, I forgot. She was titled Zubaydah by her grandfather, Al-Mansur, about whom we talked. And Zubaydah means a little butterball. And she was connected to the Khilafat through 10 Khalifas in different ways, from grandfather to father to husband to son to grandson. 10 of them were Khalifas. I mean, amazing. Now, what sort of paradox is this lady? She's the most famous lady among the Abbasids. So, and somehow I could not stop the urge to talk about her a little bit. She's an amazing lady in some ways. Her palace sounded like a beehive. Mouchaker moto. Kivabe? Because she employed 100 women, maids or slaves who had memorized the Quran, and they would be working in the palace, but they would always be reciting the Quran. And wherever she went, these maid servants would follow her, reciting the Quran. And she was religious, on the other hand, even though she had golden vessels and bowls and columns made of gold in her palace. On her fifth, she went to pilgrimage, not one time, 2 times, 3 times. And this was a 1,750 miles journey. 1,750 miles, about 3,000 kilometers of journey. And she made it 5 times, and possibly Harun al-Rashid also made 5 pilgrimages. But look at the pomp and grandeur they lived in. So when she went to the last pilgrimage, she saw a drought had devastated the population and reduced the Zamzam well to a trickle of water. She ordered the well to be deepened and spent over 2 million dinars improving the water supply of Makkah and the surrounding provinces, including constructing an aqueduct, something that will bring water from Hunain, which is famous for the Battle of Hunain, about 95 kilometers away. And all of this cost 2 million dinars. And she spent even more money. She also improved the pilgrim route across 900 miles of desert between Kufa and Makkah, and some other account says between Baghdad to Makkah. Kufa to Makkah is about 900 miles, but from Baghdad to Kufa is around another 800 miles. So total about 1,750, depending on which version you take. 1750 miles of distance, she constructed a route in those days, removing boulders, paved and cleared the boulders, and assembled water storages for pilgrims at different intervals. And the engineers in those days said, told her about the cost. And she said something, as one historian writes, she said that even if one, one digging with a shovel or with a, costs 1 dinar, I would still construct it. And she did it. She rebuilt Tabriz after a disastrous earthquake in 791. This was not, a city goes to waste. It is not the job of the central government in those days. It has become a job in recent times, actually, in the last 100, 200 years or so. But otherwise, these emperors, they would be enjoying as some place burnt, or there is earthquake in some place, or drought in some place, famine in some place. They would be least concerned, unless somebody had that bent of mind. And that's why I'm raising these events. And here's the paradox. She built herself a palace with a large carpeted banquet hall supported by pillars made of ivory and gold. Every morning, so that's about Zubaydah. Every morning, Harun gave 1,000 dirhams and made 100 prostrations a day. In some other account, I read that he prayed every day 300 rakat of optional prayer. You might say, where did he get his time? 300 rakat. I'm not sure. These accounts, you can always question them. But history books record that he was not so much interested in governing. He put very capable administrators, very capable. And they were so capable that they went beyond their call of duty, those administrators or ministers, you might call. So he had abundant time to spend in prayers and in harems, or harems, however you may pronounce them. Harun famously, and again, see the paradox here. Harun famously used to look up at rain clouds in the sky and said, rain where you like, but I will get the land tax. I will get the land tax. Wallahu alam about all these statements. You always take history with a grain of salt. But these people lived on these taxes on the people, on the poor people. Otherwise, where does the money come from for their luxury? Harun was, and again paradox, Harun was terrified for his soul in the afterlife. But he could not leave, as Umar bin Abdul Aziz could leave the luxurious life. He could not leave that. It was reported that he quickly cried when the thought of Allah came and read poems about the briefness of life, or whenever some famous Islamic ascetic gave him advice, it is reported that tears would flow from his eyes. So that is the type of person he was, a paradox. On Hajj, he distributed large amounts of money to the people of Makkah and Medina and to poor pilgrims on the way. He always took a number of ascetics with him, and whenever he was unable to go on pilgrimage, he sent dignitaries and 300 clerics, religious people, at his own expense. During those years, he could not go on Hajj. So that was I would say, digression, but also important or interesting insight into the minds of two of the most famous Abbasids, Harun and his wife. Harun's palace was an enormous institution. with numerous eunuchs. Eunuchs are neither male nor female, or their genital organs were cut out, and they used to guard the harems. So with numerous eunuchs and concubines, singing girls and slaves. And last night or night before, I forgot, I got tired reading about the names of his concubines, Harun al-Rashid's concubines. There's so many names were given. At one point, I said, no, this is too much. No more time for this. He himself was a connoisseur of music and poetry and gave lavish gifts to the outstanding musicians and poets. And that's how they were patronized. As Khalifa, he had power of life and death and could order immediate execution. And this goes for all Khalifas. In the stories of his nocturnal wanderings, he used to wander about at night through Baghdad in disguise. He is usually accompanied by Masroor, the executioner, as well as friends like Jafar the Barmakid, his prime minister, so to say, and Abu Nuwas, the brilliant poet. And Allah knows best about his intention, but some historians write that he was genuinely concerned about the condition of his subjects. So he wandered about to find about them, about their plight, and to mete out any justice that was needed. And so he took the executioner. That possibly is a more plausible reason. Otherwise, who is going to leave at night the palatial life and the concubines and wander about in the streets of Baghdad? And he has captured popular imagination because of 1001 Nights, the Arabian Nights, so much that there are a large number of modern books, movies, TV serials, poems by poets like Tennyson, Yeats, Tagore's favorite poet, and Longfellow, another very famous poet. They have written poems about Harun al-Rashid, and there are video games on him. Without his realization, Harun's empire had started on a long course of disintegration. Abbasid governors exerted greater autonomy. The governors exerted greater autonomy. And due course of time, they became like monarchs of their principality. Using this increasing power, began to make their positions hereditary. During the same period, several factions began either to leave the empire for other lands or to take control of distant parts of the empire. So you have fragmentation. The real challenge for Harun came from his family. He had to formulate a plan of succession. You know, these emperors, monarchs, they father so many children. And some of the wives are more dear to them than others. And who will be the future Khalifa, the future monarch? So that becomes palace intrigue, part of palace intrigue. Two of his most prominent sons were Al-Amin, who was actually 6 months younger to Al-Mamun. But Al-Amin was the son of Zubaydah, about whom we talked. And Al-Mamun was the son of a concubine from Persia. Zubaydah was a pure Abbasid, and Harun was a pure Abbasid. So though Al-Amin was younger, he got precedence. over Al-Mamun because his mother was a concubine. Harun wished to pass over the throne to Al-Amin, but the realm was to be divided between the two brothers. He liked Al-Mamun, I guess, because of his brilliance. Al-Mamun was brilliant, but he could not ignore Al-Amin because of his mother, Zubaydah. So he had to pass on over the succession to Al-Amin. But what he did was he divided the realm, and the realm encompassed, in today's terms, about 35 to 40 countries. It was huge, smaller than the Umayyads at their peak, a little smaller, because Spain was separated and Portugal was separated, but it was huge. So he divided the realm between the two brothers. They were stepbrothers. And he assigned Iraq and the western provinces to his son Al-Amin, the heir apparent, the next Khalifa, and the eastern provinces to the second in succession, his son Al-Ma'mun. This plan, however, was doomed to failure after Harun died. So when, after his death, when Al-Amin became the Khalifa, he wanted to remove Ma'mun. This is what some history book writes. He wanted to remove Ma'mun, and Ma'mun revolted. Civil war broke out between the two brothers, and it expanded to engulf the whole realm in a state of turmoil. After a prolonged siege from Al-Ma'mun's forces, the Khalifa decided to surrender, and some rogue elements within Al-Ma'mun's forces, some, I think they were Turks, I forget at this point, killed Al-Amin, killed the Khalifa. And history books record that Al-Ma'mun didn't desire that. He was deeply grieved, and he adopted the sons of Al-Amin. So Al-Amin was the sixth Abbasid Khalifa, son of Harun al-Rashid and Zubaydah, and he ruled for 4 years, 809 to 813. Al-Ma'mun succeeded. He assumed control, and although the golden age of Islam was at its climax after Harun al-Rashid or during Harun al-Rashid's time, it was soon to be over. It would take a decade for the dust to settle, the civil war that started and the dust that rose as a result, that was gathered as a result. It took a decade to settle and the realm to be pacified. Al-Ma'mun's love for arts and learning surpassed even his father's, but his decision to rationalize his society in opposition to the basic beliefs of the Muslim population, such as debating that the Quran could be rewritten, altered, because the Quran was created, led to him falling from the favor of many Islamic historians. The central question was about the createdness of the Quran. Was the Quran created or co-eternal with Allah? We discussed about these in some length 16 months ago. He embraced the Mutazili theology, which was deeply influenced by Aristotelian thought and Greek rationalism, and stated that matters of belief and practice should be decided by reasoning. Matters of belief and practice should be decided by reasoning, not through some divine revelation. That goes totally against Islam. This opposed the traditionalist and literalist position of the most famous scholar of those times, Ahmad ibn Hanbal and others, according to which everything a believer needed to know about faith and practice was spelled out literally in the Quran and Hadith. And you know, as we discussed during that time, or as you may know from your own knowledge of history, there was this inquisition or lot of torture on those scholars who refused to go with this utter disbelief, kufr, from the point of view of Islam, that Mamun al-Rashid wanted to impose. Al-Mamun made preparations for a major campaign against the Byzantine emperor, but died on the way while leading an expedition in Tiyana. August 7, today is August 6, 833 AD. Though he had a distinguished mind, he was never able to put an end to the divisions that were tearing the Muslim community apart and injected his very personal ideas. This is Tiyana. Somewhere is mixed with the dust from his bones, the emperor who ruled over a vast empire. And then we have Al-Mutasim, 833 to 842, was the patron of the art and a powerful military leader. Al-Wathiq, 842 to 847, was well educated and with a considerable interest in scholarship. Al-Mutawakkil was the 10th Khalifa. Under his reign, the Abbasid Empire reached its territorial height under Al-Mutawakkil. Between 750 and 833, the Abbasids raised the prestige and power of the empire. We are talking about decline of the Abbasids, promoting commerce, industry, arts, and science, particularly during the reigns of Al-Mansur, Harun al-Rashid, and Al-Mamun. Their temporal power, however, began to decline when Al-Mutasim introduced non-Muslim Berber slave and especially Turkish mercenary forces into his personal army. These troops were converted to Islam, but the base of the imperial unity through religion was gone. Some of the new army officers quickly learned to control the Khalifa through assassination of any Khalifa who would not accede to their demands. The final nail in the coffin of the Abbasid dominance was struck when Al-Mutawakkil, 847 to 861, that was just about 100 years after they took power, the Abbasids, was assassinated as part of a court coup instigated by the Turks. Al-Mutawakkil was a notorious person and has been dubbed as the Nero of the Arabs. And you know, we can safely say that the others were not like him, but they did not shy away from ruthlessness. His assassination gave the Turks an unprecedented hold over his son, Al-Muntasir, who had been placed on the throne as a puppet. Fatefully, the young ruler died shortly thereafter. So this is the height of the Abbasid Empire, basically similar from the east to the west, but then you don't have Spain because this Spain was under the Umayyads and later on under other Muslim dynasties. Another map, a different source, but shows basically similar territorial rule, territorial possession. And this one shows in green, bright green, the Abbasid Khilafat, and in other colors, various other important dynasties during the 9th century. And this one is very revealing, this map. I hope you can see. The dark green and the dark green on the left of Saudi Arabia to the east, west of Saudi Arabia, the dark green portion includes Makkah and Medina. That was under Abbasid control. And in Iraq and part of Arabia to the east was under Abbasid control. You can see the dark green around Iraq to the western part of Saudi Arabia, But the rest of it is light green which means they had nominal control over the rest. The Abbasids had nominal control over the rest. Al-Muntasir was the 11th ruler. Al-Muntasir to Al-Mustasir from 861 to 1242, or 1258 actually, from 861 to 1258, 27 Khalifas. After the 10th ruler, there were 27 Khalifas, total 37 Khalifas. So 27 Khalifas, the last 27 Khalifas in 398 years. I just have few slides. I mean, leaving these out for next Sunday, it wouldn't make sense. People won't understand much or won't remember much. So let me finish a couple of more slides that I have. 27 Khalifas in 398 years, none could leave a mark on sands of time. I read through them. Nothing notable about them because they were into pomp and grandeur and sensual life. Basically they were more closer to animals than to Muslims, real Muslims. So they couldn't leave a mark on sands of time. They were puppets confined to Mesopotamia, the map that I showed you earlier, and then to Baghdad and surrounding areas. 4 ruled for about 1 year, 2 for 2 years, one of them for 3 years, 2 of them for 4 years. So that is 9 of them. 1/3 of the 27 ruled for 4 years or less. 1/3. 4 ruled for 24 to 28 years. Nothing notable. 3 for more than 40 years. No lasting achievement. Soon after he became Khalifa, I could not prepare an adequate conclusion because we have to talk about more Muslim dynasties. And I thought the points I want to talk in conclusion would apply to all of them. So it is better that I talk about my concluding thoughts after I talk about the other Muslim dynasties. So I will end with these thoughts. Soon after he became Khalifa, Harun al-Rashid asked his attendant to bring him Ibn al-Sammak, a renowned scholar, to obtain wisdom from him. Harun asked al-Sammak, "What would you like to advise me? I'm going to be Khalifa now." Al-Sammak replied, "I would like you always to remember that one day you will stand alone before your Allah. You will stand alone. And that goes for all of us. And that's why I included this. Whatever you might be today, whatever position you may have in terms of degrees, or in terms of wealth, or in terms of achievements, in terms of name and fame and power, you will have to stand alone before Allah. So this belief in Allah and the last day is what can make or bring difference in our lives. Because if we don't have belief in the last day, accountability, and then we don't need to change our life. We can do whatever we want to, because we are not accountable to anybody if we have the power. That belief changes everything, all equation. So he says that, remember, you will stand alone before your Allah. You will then be consigned either to heaven or to hell. He may have said in more words, this is after so many hundreds of thousands, centuries. He may have said in more words. That was too harsh for Harun's liking, and he was obviously disturbed. Harun didn't like, or possibly liked it. Allah knows best. His servant cried out in protest. The attendants around him, they cried out in protest that the prince of the faithful will definitely, or commander of the faithful, will definitely go to heaven after he has ruled justly on earth. He hasn't started ruling yet. People forget the other part, that I'm praying 300 rakat every day. I'm giving out 1,000 dinars or dirhams in the morning, and I'm going for Hajj so many times. They forget the other part, which is accountability. How will you account for the life you are leading? You are taxing poor people on their land and their produce. And based on that tyranny, injustice, you are leading a lavish life, and concubines and slaves and soldiers guarding you and divisions guarding you. How will you give account of these? The accountability for wealth. The more somebody has, the more is the accountability. The less somebody has, the less is the accountability. People don't understand that we have to enter Islam completely. Udkhulu fi silmi kaffa. And Allah Ta'ala is addressing the believers in this part of the Quran. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu udkhulu fi silmi kaffa. Enter into Islam wholeheartedly, O believers. Not that Hajj and prayer and sadaqah. Complete life will be seen. Complete life. And also your oppression and suppression over your subjects or over whoever you are entrusted with. They seem to forget that part. How could somebody in his right mind lead a life which does not mimic the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why did Allah Ta'ala give such an example? What was the reason? One could, after prayer, 5 prayers, if one could lead a life according to his whims and wishes, why did Allah Ta'ala give such an example? And examples of tens of thousands of followers who followed him to the letter. We are totally oblivious of that part. We in this gathering, forget Harun al-Rashid. He was into such huge. He was part of such a huge institution. He could not leave it. Everybody cannot be Omar bin Abdul Aziz. So his servant cried out in protest that the prince of the commander of the faithful will definitely go to heaven. Definitely. Oh my goodness. What a statement you are making out of blind allegiance. Will definitely go to heaven after he has ruled justly on earth. And see the response of Ibn Sammak. However, Al-Sammak ignored the interruption and looked straight into the eyes of Harun. And it needed a lot of guts. And this scholar had the guts and said, "You will not have this man to defend you on that day. You will not have this man to defend you on that day. You will not have this man to defend you on that day. And we will not have our wealth and position and power and fame to defend us on that day." May Allah Ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand that. I have taken extra time to finish this part. I'm not going to go over names, but in general terms, I will once again repeat what I normally repeat at this point, that may Allah Ta'ala first and foremost accept us and accept what is in our heart and remove our difficulties and cure our illnesses, physical and mental and spiritual. And may Allah Ta'ala cure all who are in our hearts, who are in difficulties and illnesses, all those who are in our heart having difficulties and illnesses. And may Allah Ta'ala grant cure to all whose name I have in front of me. I will not name them for the sake of time. Allah Ta'ala knows them, and so it doesn't matter. And may Allah Ta'ala grant salvation in the grave to all our near and dear ones, from our relatives, our parents, our near and dear ones, and our friends, our teachers, our administrators. And I just remember that Mr. Tufazzal Hussain, I happened to perchance read this from a posting of the adjutant, Major Juban Wahid, who mentioned that a former teacher of RCC, Mr. Tufazzal Hussain, and later on he became principal of Feni Girls Cadet College. He died, I think yesterday in CMH. We pray for his salvation. May Allah Ta'ala grant him Jannatul Firdaus, and all the administrators and the staff, and since we have somebody who died, let's recite Surah Fatiha once and Surah Ikhlas 3 times. And with this extra virtues, inshallah, we will convey blessings, more blessings. In addition to whatever we did so far, we'll convey more blessings to all our near and dear ones. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Rahmanir Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma. Any message? No message in the chat box. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Jazallahu anna Muhammadan sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa huwa ahluhu. Subhana Rabbiyal Aliyyil A'la al-Wahhab. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi adada khalqi wa riza nafsi wa zinata arshi wa midada kalimatihi. Rabbana la tu'akhidhna in nasina wa akhtana. Rabbana wa la tahmil alayna isran kama hamaltahu ala alladhina min qablina. Rabbana wa la tuhammilna ma la taqata lana bihi. Wa'fu anna waghfir lana warhamna. Anta maulana fansurna ala al-qawmil kafirin. Anta maulana fansurna ala al-qawmil munafiqin. Anta maulana fansurna ala al-qawmil zalimin. Rabbana innana samina munadi ayyunadi lil imani an'animu bi rabbikum fa'amanna. Rabbana faghfir lana dhunubana wa kaffir anna sayyi'atina wa tawaffana ma'al abrar. Rabbana wa atina fid dunya wa atina ma wa'adtana ala rusulika wa la tukhzina yawmal qiyamati innaka la tukhliful mi'ad. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar. Allahumma inna as'aluka al-afiyah. Allahumma inna as'aluka al-afiyah. Allahumma inna as'aluka al-afiyah. Allahumma as'aluka min khairi masalaka minhu nabiyyuka Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Na'udzu bika min syarri masta'azaka minhu nabiyyuka Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Antal musta'an wa alaikal balagh wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Allahumma ighfir li wa li walidina wa jami'il mu'minin wal mu'minat wal muslimin wal muslimat al-ahya'i minhum wal amwat innaka mujibud da'wat bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ya Zul Jalali wal Ikram, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, bi rahmatika nastaghis. Ya Fatir samawati wal ard, anta wali fid dunya wal akhirah. Ya Malik al Mulk, wallah. You have been most gracious, most merciful in granting us the tawfiq, wallah, to get some reminder about you and to learn from history, Allah. Oh Allah, open our eyes, Allah, our inner eyes. Oh Allah, grant us the ability to make the intention to be on complete deen, to make firm intention to be on complete deen, to make firm dua to you with utmost humility, the dua to you so that you give us the tawfiq to be on complete deen, Allah. Oh Allah, and grant us the ability to seek the knowledge, to know about you, to know about your commandments, to know about your qualities, to know about your commandments, and to know about how to obey your commandments as per the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah. And whatever tawfiq you have given us, Allah, give us the ability to perform those deeds in the best manner possible, and every deed better than the previous one that we performed, Allah. And grant us the ability to convey your message to others, the task that you have given us and have termed us the best of nations. Allah, forgive all our sins, Allah, committed openly or secretly. Forgive all our sins, major or minor. Forgive all our sins, committed knowingly or unknowingly, and protect us in the future, Allah, from all major sins, Allah. Oh Allah, you accept us, Allah. Grant us your rahmah, your maghfirah, your hifazat, your hidayat, Allah. Keep us underneath the shade of your maghfirat and hifazat and hidayat and maghfirat, Allah. And keep our future progeny under the shade of your mercy, Allah, and the guidance. And keep all Muslims under the shade of your mercy and guidance, and their progeny under your mercy and guidance. Oh Allah, guide all mankind, Allah, and protect and save their children, Allah. Oh Allah, you can put everybody in hellfire, but it will not benefit you in the least, Allah. Oh Allah, you can put everybody in paradise by guiding them, Allah, to you. And it's not going to create any shortcoming for you, Allah. You, Allah, grant everybody Jannah. Oh Allah, grant everybody Jannah. Oh Allah, you are the most kind and you are the most merciful, Allah. Oh Allah, we need your acceptance, Allah. You accept us, Allah. Without your acceptance, the most easy task will be difficult. And with your acceptance, the most difficult task will be easy, Allah. Even if our heart doesn't desire, accept us, Allah. Oh Allah, accept us, Allah. Oh Allah, you protect us from shaitan, the whisperings of shaitan. You protect us from the whisperings of evil people. You protect us from the whisperings of our evil self. You protect us from the fatal attraction of dunya. And not for a single moment do you leave us to these forces, Allah. And not without your acceptance do you take us from this dunya. And when we leave the world, make us utter the kalama and make us die after foiling the last attempt of shaitan with full faith in your providence, in your magnificence, in your munificence, in your bounty, in your mercy, Allah. Oh Allah, do not take us without accepting us, Allah, completely, and without giving us the tawfiq to enter into Islam completely, and without fearing you in the manner you should be feared and obeyed, Allah. Oh Allah, whatever we have been able to recite, Allah, convey to Janab Tafazul Hussain, who was our teacher in our college. Oh Allah, and convey whatever we have been able to earn, forgive the mistakes and remove the shortcomings, Allah, and accept and accept in spite of the shortcomings, and convey the blessings to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and convey the blessings to our parents, to our grandparents, to our uncles and aunts and our friends, our relatives, our neighbors, our near and dear ones, our teachers, our administrators, our staff who cared for us, or anybody who cared for us at any point in our lives, and convey, in short, to all Muslims who have passed away, Allah, remove their punishment in the grave, expand their grave, fill their grave with nur, and make their grave a garden of Jannatul Firdaus. And when we enter the grave, Allah, grant to us your best treatment, Allah, in the grave. And on the day of judgment, when we rise up with our near and dear ones, grant us shade underneath your arsh and make our hisab easy, and grant us our book of deeds in our right hands. And when we cross the bridge with our near and dear ones, enable us to cross the bridge in the wink of an eye, Allah. And when we are at the doorstep of paradise by your mercy and grace, Allah, enable us to enter Jannatul Firdaus so that we can be underneath your mercy for eternity and in the company of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Oh Allah, you grant us what is in our heart and that will be beneficial for us, Allah, and remove our difficulties and grant us deliverance from illnesses. And whoever we have in our heart because of their difficulties, remove their difficulties. And whoever we have in our heart because of their illnesses, remove their illnesses, Allah. Well, Allah, it is beyond my capacity to ask of you equal to your magnificence and munificence, Allah. You grant us equal to your magnificence and munificence. Well, it is beyond my capacity to ask of you protection equal to your might and majesty, Allah. You grant us protection equal to your might and majesty. Allahumma innaka afuwun kareemun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. Rabbana zalamna anfusana wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna lanakunanna minal khasirin. Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana wa hab lana min ladunka rahmatan innaka antal wahhab. Ya Qaziyul Hajat, Ya Rafi'ud Darajat, Ya Halal al-Mushkilat, Ya Mujibud Da'wat, Bi rahmatika nastaghith, Ya Awwal al-Awwalin, Ya Akhir al-Akhirin, Ya Akram al-Akramin, Ya Arhamar Rahimin, Ya Rahim al-Masakin, Ya Zil Quwwat al-Matin. Wallah, after forgiving us, Allah, keep us from sins as you keep east far away from west. Forgive all our sins and accept all our wishes, our desires that will be beneficial for us. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وحمد لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم آمين يا رب العالمين Subhanallah wa bihamdi subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayka. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Any very